The storm outside raged like a wild beast that night, hammering against the glass walls of the mansion high above the city.
Inside, everything was silent, almost too silent.
The clock struck midnight, and a man who had built an empire worth billions lay motionless on a king-sized bed, his breathing shallow, his eyes half-closed, pretending to sleep. But Alexander Hale wasn't asleep.
Not even close.
The most powerful man in the city, known for his ruthless decisions and emotionless heart, was wide awake, waiting to see what the young woman who worked quietly in the shadows of his home would do when she thought no one was watching. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of a single good heart to change even the coldest soul, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel Kindness Speaks. Your support helps us spread more stories that touch hearts and remind the world that compassion still exists. Alexander had everything money could buy: fame, respect, the world's best penthouse overlooking the skyline, and a company that bore his name in steel and gold. But inside he was empty. After losing his wife in a car accident 3 years ago, he had buried himself in work and bitterness. He trusted no one, spoke little, and saw everyone as either an asset or a liability. The only person who had managed to pierce through the icy walls of his mansion, even unknowingly, was his maid, a quiet young woman named Clara. Clara was 24, shy, soft-spoken, and always kept her eyes down when she worked. She had been hired by the housekeeper months ago and had barely exchanged more than a few polite words with her employer. Yet, something about her presence had begun to haunt Alexander. She moved through the house like a whisper, never asking for anything, never complaining, but always there. She often left small acts of care in her wake: fresh flowers on the windowsill, a folded blanket on his chair, a cup of tea left warm beside his desk during late nights. He noticed, though she never knew. One evening, after overhearing the staff gossiping that Clara only cared about the paycheck and was probably stealing expensive perfume bottles from the guest rooms, Alexander's heart hardened again. Maybe she's like everyone else, he thought.
Maybe kindness is just another mask. But part of him didn't want to believe it.
And so he decided to test her in his own cold, calculating way. He dismissed the guards early that night, dimmed the lights, and lay down on his bed pretending to be asleep. His plan was simple. He'd pretend to rest and see what Clara would do when she entered to clean the room, thinking he was unconscious. Would she steal? Would she mock him like others had? Or would she prove different? His heart, buried deep beneath years of pain, secretly hoped for the latter, though he didn't admit it, even to himself. At 12:15 a.m., the door creaked open softly. Clara stepped in, holding a tray of warm milk and a folded blanket. Her movements were gentle, her steps barely audible on the polished marble floor. She set the tray down carefully and looked toward the bed where Alexander lay still. The faint glow from the bedside lamp painted his face in soft gold, and for a moment her eyes filled with something unspoken. Not desire, not fear, but something tender, like sorrow mixed with gratitude. She whispered so quietly he almost thought he imagined it.
"You look so tired, sir. I wish you'd let yourself rest for real." She hesitated, then reached out to straighten the corner of his blanket, her hand trembling slightly.
The billionaire, who commanded thousands of employees, who had once shouted at board members and broken glasses in anger, felt his throat tighten at the sincerity in that tiny gesture. Then Clara did something that shattered him completely. From her apron pocket, she pulled out a small piece of paper, worn, folded many times, and placed it carefully on his nightstand.
"I don't know if you'll ever read this," she whispered again, "but I just wanted to say thank you. This job saved my life." Her voice broke.
You probably don't remember, but 3 years ago, when my brother was sick and I came here begging for a job, you didn't even look at me. Your manager just said yes and walked away. That was enough. Because of this job, I was able to pay for his surgery. He's alive today because of you." She stood still for a long moment, fighting tears, then added softly, "You're not as cold as they say."
"I think you're just hurt." Alexander felt something burning behind his closed eyes, but he couldn't move.
He had expected betrayal, selfishness, anything but this. As she turned to leave, he noticed her pause by the window. The storm outside had calmed, and she looked out over the city lights with a small, wistful smile.
"I wish the world was kinder to you," she murmured.
"The way you've unknowingly been kind to me." Then she picked up his empty teacup from earlier and quietly slipped out of the room. The moment the door closed, Alexander sat up, his hands trembling. He reached for the note. The handwriting was neat but shaky. It was more than a thank you note. It was a story of survival. She had been homeless once, sleeping in a shelter after her parents died. She had written how, on her worst nights, she prayed for one chance, just one person who would believe in her worth. That chance had come from him, though he had never meant it personally. Her words ended with, "Sometimes kindness doesn't need to be loud. Sometimes it's just giving someone a reason to keep going." The powerful billionaire, who had signed billion-dollar deals without flinching, now sat on the edge of his bed with tears streaming down his face. For the first time in years, he felt something break inside him. The walls, the bitterness, the loneliness. He realized how many lives his choices had quietly touched, and how many people like Clara lived in the shadows of his empire, holding on to hope that he never knew he'd given. The next morning, when Clara came to clean the study, she froze. On the desk sat a bouquet of fresh white lilies, her favorite, and a handwritten note in bold, elegant script. "You were right.
Maybe I was just hurt.
But thank you for reminding me how to feel again. A.H." Next to it lay an envelope, her brother's university scholarship papers, fully paid for by the Hale Foundation. From that day forward, Alexander Hale was no longer the cold, unreachable man he once was. He began to smile again, to walk among his employees, to listen. He quietly launched a program that hired and trained people from shelters, giving them homes and jobs, never mentioning Clara's name. But she knew. She saw the change in his eyes, and for the first time, she smiled back. Months later, during a company charity gala, Alexander stood before hundreds of people and shared a short speech that silenced the room. "Sometimes," he said, voice breaking, "the greatest lessons in life don't come from power, wealth, or success, but from the kindness of those we overlook. One person's gratitude can heal 1,000 silent wounds." His eyes met Clara's in the crowd, and in that brief moment, 2 lives quietly acknowledged what words could never express. If this story touched your heart, please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness Speaks. Every small act of support helps us continue sharing stories that remind the world that empathy, grace, and second chances still exist.
And